Hey everybody, Tim here with today's episode of Orville, Season 1, Episode 3, About a Girl. I love this episode. So I've done 900 videos. I think this is actually my 900th video. So I've done a lot, and I have not given a perfect score very often. And I do believe this is one of those few that deserves like a 10 out of 10. I absolutely love everything about this episode because it really kind of makes you question everything like you believe in and just society in general. So from the last episode, we find out that Boris and his partner have given birth to a baby girl, which is something that is impossible. Well, as Isaac points out, like a Mocklin gives birth to a female once every 75 years. Within this episode, we realize that's not true. It's rare, but it's more common than people think it is. Because I'm just going to kind of jump to the, close to the end. Clyden, Boris's own mate, was born a female and had that reconstructive surgery. So, Clyden is clearly not 75 years old. I don't know his race or how they age, whatever, but it's obviously more common than people pointed out to be. So, first of all, before I even get too far into the ramifications of this episode, Yaphet and Claire are the weirdest couple ever, because Yaphet, who's voiced by the amazing Norm Macdonald, is interested in Claire, and she's like, no, you're just this weird, almost putty type thing. It's not gonna happen. But it's a common thread throughout the series, so kind of keep that in the back of your nog. So Boris comes to Dr. Claire and asks, will you perform a sex change on my baby? And she's like, why would I do that? Well, on the home world, it's men only. That's how it is. Even, let's say, if it's 1 in 10, females are not welcomed on this planet. So that's the social norm. And he asks, will you perform the sex change? Because if we were on the home world, they would do it. No questions asked. Duh. And she says no, because that's kind of the obvious choice. A sex change on a baby is unquestionably wrong. Hippocratic oath, all of that, no. So we go to the holodeck program, which is a great scene. The whole dance-off thing. You hear Madonna playing in the background. Now, and I believe, I could be wrong, but Ed is wearing, I think, the same outfit that Seth MacFarlane wore in The Million Ways to Die in the West, where it's the blue and the vest and the hat and stuff. So I thought that was kind of a great shout out. And so Boris brings up some interesting points about oh, well, if a baby's born with a cleft palate, what would you do? We fix it. It takes 10 seconds, boom, fixed, moving on. Well, to judge this baby and the sex change by a human standard is wrong, because on Boris's home world, the Mocklin home world, they would do it, no questions asked. They would just do this sex change because that's how their people are. And Ed is well, that's wrong. Who are you to question whether an entire race is wrong? So already it's bringing in a lot of really deep questions. So Boris goes behind Ed's back to make a rendezvous with another Mocklin ship and say, nobody here will do the sex change. I need you guys to pick up my daughter to give her the change. And they're like, okay, whatever, we'll be right there. And of course, that brings in the fight with Ed and Boris. How dare you go behind my back? I asked you for help and you wouldn't do it. Which, for somebody who works in retail, that's what we're told over and over again. Go to the top person. Okay, you didn't get the response you wanted. Go above them. Okay, you didn't get the response you wanted. Go above them. And so on and so forth. So Ed and Kelly talk, and Ed comes up with the same point. Let's say we had a baby and this baby was born with a third leg. Would we have it removed? Well, of course, because humans don't have 3 legs. But other aliens do have 3 legs, so he should be a functioning society of, the galaxy. But because he's human, and humans don't have a third leg, we should remove it. But this Mocklin was born as a female, so should we change it? Even though most Mocklins would, we're saying no because it's against our own beliefs. So it's really bringing in a lot of questioning. And so they start questioning, like, well, why do they not like females? Oh, because they're weak. So we see the whole thing with Alara and Boris boxing, and Alara clearly wins. But that's not quite it either. The whole scene with, like, Gordon and them watching Rudolph. And it's like, oh, and Rudolph. I love how Rudolph is the one that, like, inspires Boris. Because, let me tell you, like, those... like holiday specials, the Rankin and Bass specials are my favorites. Like I have all of them. The Halloween specials, the Easter Bunny specials, the New Year's specials. I love Rankin and Bass. Like everything they've done, I love it. Whether it's Rudolph, whether it's Lord of the Rings. I love Rankin and Bass. Second favorite directors. Boom. Anyway. So this is where we find out that Clyden was actually born female. And he's like, no, we need to do this. I was born female. We need to fix this. And so kind of changes everything. So Boris asks for a tribunal with Kelly, a female, to defend. I can't even get over how good this is. Like, this is one of the best things on television I've ever seen. And this is where they kind of have some great foreshadow. If nothing else, this series is amazing at foreshadow, where Boris gives this like poem about society. And he's like, this is from my greatest writer. Now you say a poem. And Kelly quotes, I'm a Survivor by Destiny's Child. And it's like 15 different writers and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, that's great. Which is important. Keep that, again, in the back of your nog. And so from here, we kind of go back into like what do I want to say? Like the courtroom drama where we see Kelly questioning them over physical strength. And we see Alara who like can crush this ball. And they're like, well, if she was a male from her planet, it would be half as easy. She questions Gordon because he's an idiot about questions and stuff, which is kind of funny because they follow the 2-in-1 Star Trek rule. If you ever watch, especially like the original Star Trek, there's always the 2-in-1. Like, name 3 of the greatest writers of Earth history. Well, there's Shakespeare. There's I just lost everything I had. Like, there's this classical writer from Earth history. And then there's this random alien. There's always 2-in-1. Like, name 3 of the greatest musicians. Well, there's Beethoven, there's Mozart, and then there's Alpha Centauri. Okay, so because they always pick 2 that you know, and then 1 alien one from the future. So they kind of go with that method in this intelligence question. So anyways, once again, they bring up the good point of circumcision, which is a great scene where they're like, Ed, tell us about your penis. And he's like, pass. So anyway, and it's a great scene. It's super awkward. And they're like, well, talk to us about circumcision and what it's like on your planet. Which, here where I live in America, I don't know the official stats. I could have looked them up, but at this point, I think they're all kind of made up anyway. But growing up, I know, like, a high majority was, like, of all men were circumcised. And at this point here in America, it has dropped significantly to, I think it's less than half. Like, it's about 50-50 at this point. So it's kind of an interesting concept. Like, you have a baby. Are you going to surgically alter it sexually without its consent rather than let it grow up and make its own decision? These are huge topics. These are like today topics that we are still discussing. And that is what Star Trek was all about, was let's take these big hot button subjects that we are still discussing and let's take them and put them in a sci-fi setting to kind of alter them. And that's how we got things like the first interracial kiss. Like, this is big stuff that we need to be discussing. But if you throw it in the future and you throw in an alien, it completely alters it. So, like, this whole thing about, like, sexual identity. How do you view yourself? Is it right to surgically alter a infant child on its 8th day of life? Like, these are big things that need to be talked about. And Orville is doing it in a way that is funny, so it gets people's attention, but also in a serious note. Like, I cannot get over how amazing this show is. And on top of all of this, like, they kind of twist it where Ed finds a female out in the mountains, and it turns out that it's Gondis Eldon or whatever, the famous writer that Boris quoted earlier in the episode. Like I said, foreshadow going on right here. This famous writer that everybody knows is a female. So, like, once again, it's altering how females are changed. All of this is very important. And that all being said, the ending of this episode is the most important. Why? Because they still surgically alter the baby. Boris and Clyden now have a son named Topa. That is huge. And I cannot get over my respect for this show for still doing it. Do I agree? Do I disagree on if it was right or wrong? It doesn't matter. It was still done. But the fact that all of these different societies have their ways of doing things, this is how it's been done for years. Is it right? Is it wrong? Doesn't matter. This is how it is, and you cannot project your views on this society. Like, who are you to come in and say everything you're doing is wrong because I say so? Doesn't matter if you've been doing it for 1,000,000 years. I think it's wrong, so you need to stop. They didn't. They still altered this child's sexual organs to fit in their society. That is huge, because I guarantee you, I admit, like, I was surprised. I was watching it and I was like, okay, they made their pitch and now they're going to raise a female and we'll see how that, like, escalates from there. They changed the baby, so now it's a male, and it completely caught me off guard. Like, I was completely astonished that they actually did it based off of their society's customs. So, I don't know. This is one of my favorite episodes of television. I've talked about, like, one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek is Star Trek Voyager Death Wish, where it's all about the Q who wants to commit suicide. And when you get to the end of the episode, he does. He actually kills himself. And it's a serious moment where you're like, I didn't think they would do that on television. This is up as par with that, where it's like, this whole episode, is it right or is it wrong to sexually alter a child? Is it right or is it wrong to break the customs of a society? It's up to people. It's up to their own decision. I mean, this is their society and this is what they wanted to do. So, I don't know, I thought this was one of the greatest episodes I've ever seen. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. So, I'm really kind of curious what you guys think. Go ahead, let me know, and I'll see you guys next time for If the Stars Should Appear.